Comics are weird.
Speaking of weird comics, combination superheroes. Why isn't this something we see a lot more of? I only ask because, let's face it, most popular superheroes of the last ever have been created to appeal mostly to children. And what's a more kiddish idea for a superhero than smash two guys into one cooler guy? I mean, they're kinda doing that now with the Falcon also being Captain America, but that's not exactly the same thing. A better case study would be the Super-Skrull, an alien who had all the powers of the Fantastic Four, and was later expanded into a bunch of aliens with a bunch of mix and match powers during the Secret Invasion event. Marvel and DC actually had a whole crossover event called Amalgam, but that's a whole other show. And then there's the fusion stuff in Dragon Ball Z, which is also part of the plot of Steven Universe, but that's getting off track. The most well-known of these characters is almost certainly the evil Composite Superman, an actual character who debuted in 1964 and possesses the combined power of Batman's intelligence and Superman's everything else, which I assume means he would totally own Goku in Death Battle even faster. Kidding. Actually, it's a lot stranger than that. See, Composite Superman doesn't actually have either Superman or Batman's powers. He just thought the costume was a cool idea. The powers he actually borrowed came from members and regular associates of the Silver Age Legion of Superheroes. In this particular case, Supergirl, Colossal Boy, Shrinking Violet, Triplicate Girl, Lightning Lad, Sun Boy, Light Lass, Star Boy, Matter Eater Lad, Invisible Kid, Bouncing Boy, Elastic Lad, Chameleon Boy, Saturn Girl, Brainiac 5, Mon-El, Cosmic Boy, Element Lad, and Phantom Girl. And people have the nerve to say the DC Universe is hard to translate for a modern audience. But the most bizarre-looking and overpowered combination hero is surely still Marvel's infamous aberration, Combo Man, who had the powers of 14 different Marvel Comics characters, and also the costumes of 14 different Marvel Comics characters, arranged in symmetrical horizontal layers across his entire body. Yep. Drink it in. This was a thing that happened. Why? Because Marvel was in no position to say no to any source of money in the mid-90s, and they'd struck a licensing deal with Combos. Yes, as in Combos the snack food. And for some reason, instead of going the traditional licensing route of sending heroes on a product-related adventure or teaming up the licensee's mascot with a real comics hero, for a brief period in 1996, the mascot for Combos was a guy made of 14 different already existing Marvel superheroes, who turned his powers on and off by eating combos. In his origin story, related in a one-off mini Ashcan comic published by Marvel, teenage pushover Rick Wilder is bullied into burglarizing his school science lab late at night, only to discover that the lab is already being burglarized by perennial Marvel Comics villains Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM, which results in a scuffle and a big explosion of science stuff. But Rick just so happened to be carrying a bag containing a selection of Marvel comic books and plenty of delicious combos, so instead of killing him, the explosion transforms Rick into Combo Man, who uses his incredibly disproportionate power set to defeat AIM and surprise guest villain the Super Adaptoid, learn a valuable lesson about peer pressure in the process. Hooray! Believe it or not, the writer on this was one-time Marvel boss and comics industry legend Mark Grunwald, fortunately much better known for Squadron Supreme and his decade-defining 10-year run as the writer of Captain America. Rick Wilder's adventures as Combo Man sadly did not continue beyond the year-long series of Marvel-published Combos advertisements, a heavy push for Combo Man merchandise, and a sponsored contest asking comics fans to try their hand at determining the identity of every Marvel character Combo Man was made of. You could win a hat or a jacket, which, would be nice and useful, except they've got Combo Man on them. Oh hey, and if you're wondering how Rick had Marvel comic books with him when the presence of those villains clearly indicates this story is taking place in the Marvel Universe, well, it doesn't come up much anymore, but for the longest time, believe it or not, it was actual Marvel canon that most of the same comics published in our real world are published in that universe too, but as works of non-fiction. Seriously, the heroes even used to bump into Marvel writers following them around to get the story. Comics are, well, But okay, yeah, let's actually talk about who this dude is actually made of, because I know that's what you're waiting for, and let's face it, why even do the episode otherwise? Starting up top, it's actually easy enough. That's the Hulk's scalp, Cyclops' eyes and visor, Iron Man's lower jaw, if they made this today, he would be like 60% Iron Man parts, right? Magneto's shoulders, seemingly because that means he gets to have Magneto's fabulous purple cape. And then things get a little shiftier when you get down to the torso. His chest is one half Punisher and one half Captain America, which, presumably by accident, means that the Combo Man chest symbol makes him look more like a dental hygiene mascot than a snack food mascot, and also doesn't make a lot of practical sense. Punisher doesn't have powers, he's just a normal guy who's pretty good with guns and hand-to-hand combat who routinely gets his ass kicked by most of the other guys Combo Man is made of. Plus, while it's not entirely clear if any or all of the borrowed powers are localized to their position on his body, why risk having the most vulnerable guy sliced directly over your heart? Anyway, then it gets a little harder. You might think these are Wolverine's upper abs and biceps, but nope, they're actually Sabretooth's. And then his lower abs and elbows are supposed to be from Carnage. How unfucking fair is that for the contest? Carnage? Sure, in 96 that piece of shit character was actually popular, but still, Carnage is just black and red. There's nothing distinctive about him without the stringy, gloopy symbiote stuff happening, and you can't see that here. You can only really see it on the cover of the separate Combo Man origin comic. Who was gonna guess this? Hell, my guess would have been improperly shadowed Daredevil, but no, Daredevil is actually in the forearms, one slice down, and the waist, because in 1996, Daredevil was still wearing one of the worst redesigned costumes ever. And wait a sec, Daredevil's powers are mainly based on overcoming or compensating for his blindness, so is Combo Man blind? If so, how does he use the visor? Whatever. Oh, and the hands are from Spider-Man so he can shoot webs, though I'm not sure how that's supposed to work because only the trigger and nozzle for Spider-Man's web shooters were on his hands. The rest of the device runs up Peter Parker's forearm, but the thighs are the worst part. Who the hell's thighs are these supposed to be? Thor, maybe? Ghost Rider? Nick Fury? Venom, but with knee pads? You know whose legs these are? Sentry. Yeah, believe it or not, this is not a terrible 90s Image character,
But I repeat myself.
Sentry was a terrible 90s Marvel character. He's from space, amalgamated powers and memories of some lost alien race or whatever, nobody cares. He was boring, overpowered, and the only reason anyone might recall him is that he was on that Iron Man cartoon a few times. Here's what's really fucked up. The only part of him that might have helped anyone identify this outfit, the stupid chains, isn't part of the Combo Man costume. And then he's got the Human Torch's knees. Sure, why not? Why wouldn't you want the powers of fire and flight in your knees? But whatever, all these powers should never even need to get used because he's got the Silver Surfer's shins, which means that at least his shins have the power cosmic, which is pretty much... Wait, I just realized something. Oh, and the boots are Gambit's, but who cares? Seriously, Gambit is terrible. Yeah, I just realized some of these pieces are from costumes, but like for Silver Surfer and Torch and Hulk and Carnage, that's just their skin. So it stands to reason that Combo Man has pieces of the other characters' bodies under the costume parts, right? So he's got like the digestive tract of a mutant, a human, and an alien symbiote, all connected down to the butt and junk of whatever the hell Sentry is. How does that even work? And I'd say that's kind of an important question because remember, Combo Man gets his powers from eating combos. Also, I know Rick didn't really get a say in how he was laid out, but if you could ask, wouldn't you ask for the Hulk part to go right around here instead of on the top of your head because, you know, every little bit must help? And on that note, why is the Hulk part regular-sized when Hulks are almost always substantially bigger than normal humans? Shouldn't that be Bruce Banner's scalp up there instead, so then maybe Combo Man would be really smart? I may be overthinking this. And yeah, that's Combo Man. A terrible idea that probably should have been forgotten, but now that I've mentioned it on the internet, probably never will be. Trust me.